listeners, welcome back to Shooting Rabbits in a Barrel, a podcast brought to you by Scarecrow Consultants. I'm Jess Korzeniowska, and as ever, I'm joined by Jon Holt, who is going to be taking us through more lessons today learned from his career in systems engineering and other associated mishaps and hilarious situations. Jon, how's it going?
Very good, thanks. It's a bit colder today. I can see you've got your roll neck sweater on. So.
It is. I'm very cold. I'm even sat here with a blanket, as I often do, like an old lady, old grandma at my desk. There we are. Okay, to remind our listeners, there are two questions we ask everybody who comes on Shooting Rabbits in a Barrel. And they are, what story would you like to share with us today? And what valuable lesson did you learn? So, Jon, what story would you like to share with us today?
Well, I've decided to call this one Human-Cyborg Relations, is the name of this story. And it involves everybody's favourite human-cyborg relation droid, which we'll come to in a moment. And it will hopefully take you back to your childhood, Jess. So this story starts in the spring of 1996. So in the spring of 1996, something quite marvellous happened. Okay, so you probably won't remember this, Jess. I'm assuming that you don't have to say, but I'm assuming you were very young at the time.
I was very young.
But the spring of 1996, George Lucas, the director of the original Star Wars trilogy, decided to digitally remaster the original. At the time, there were only 3 Star All films. To digitally remaster the original Star Wars trilogy, and so he redid a load of the special effects, and it was all quite marvellous. So at the time, I only had one child at the time. My eldest son was 5 years old at the time, and so I thought, this is great. I can take him to the cinema and see the Star Wars the Star Wars trilogy, because obviously we had them on VHS, which was an old videotape mechanism for the youngsters listening to this. But we'd never seen them at the cinema, so I thought, this is going to be brilliant. I can take them to the cinema. Now, Jess, do you know what a Tazo is?
No, I do not know what a Tazo is.
A Tazo is a small circular, it's a disc made of cardboard with a picture on it, with like a photograph on it. And Walker's Crisps, in answer to the question, what better way to celebrate the digital remastering of the original Star Wars trilogy by George Lucas, decided to put these cardboard discs inside bags of Walker's Crisps. So I can show you exactly what one looks like. I've got a couple of props with me today. So This is a Tazo, so it's just a little circular disc, and Walker's decided for hygiene reasons to pop these inside various bags of crisps, and you could collect together, I think it was 60 of these, and then they released a very special limited edition of 20 ones that you could only get in Doritos. So Walker's had just bought Doritos at the time, so you had to buy, rather than regular crisps, you had to buy Doritos. So I'd force-fed my son nothing but Doritos for about 6 weeks. He turned slightly orange at one point because he'd eaten so many of the cheesy ones. But ultimately, we got all the discs and we collected the entire set together. And if you collected the entire set together, you could send off for Walker's for this. This is the Star Wars Tazo's collector's force pack. Okay, and it's like a presentation binder, and inside are these rather tasteful cardboard pages, upon which you can mount your Tazos, and it would tell the story of the original Star Wars trilogy. And so I got this for my son, obviously. I sent off and collected this. But inside the back, and this is where we get to the nub of the story, is there's Tazo trivia. How well do you know the Star Wars universe? And I went down, and there's 30 questions, okay? And I don't want to brag, but I got them all. But question 15, and I'm reading this out verbatim now. Question 15. Which singer from Shalimar played C-3PO? Now, I know who played C-3PO, the golden droid, was Anthony Daniels, but I never knew he was the lead singer of Shalimar. So Shalimar, for some of our younger listeners, was a sort of popular sort of pop outfit in the 1980s who had hits with Night to Remember and other similar things. Anyway, they were quite big for a few years. They're still around. Now, and I thought, God, I never knew that Anthony Daniels was the lead singer of Shalimar, but, stranger things have happened. And I thought, I tell you what I'll do. I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna keep it at the back of my mind. And then one day I'm going to be in a pub quiz, and that question's going to come up. And I'm gonna look like a pub quiz god, because I know this really obscure fact about the guy who played C-3PO. Was actually the lead singer of Shalimar, who had hits with Night to Remember in the early 80s. So time passed. I would say 15 years passed. Okay, and I'd all but forgotten about this. So every every year, my friends and I go for, I'll just call it a gentleman's weekend away. So it's themed around, usually around a sporting event, but we'll go somewhere, we'll travel away, we'll have a weekend away that normally involves maybe the odd drink or two, a few bawdy tales, and much good wholesome manliness. Let's put it that way.
This is what the kids these days would refer to as a lads' weekend, or just lads.
No, we were. It's all very gentle, very respectable, as you can imagine. So this particular year was the Rugby World Cup. So I live in Wales, and so we said, well, we want to go and see, just in pubs, the Rugby World Cup. But the only place we were guaranteed to see the Welsh rugby team play is in Wales. So we said, well, we'll stick to Wales. So there's a very rude joke that's about to come up, Jess. So what I'm going to do, before I do the rude joke, I will pause, I will tell the rude joke, and then I will pause again. And then that way, if it gets removed in the edit, it's fine. But if it stays in... So anyway, we went to a very beautiful, picturesque place called Tenby, okay, in sort of mid to West Wales. One of my favourite places in the world. It's known as the Las Vegas of Wales. So we decided to go. We decided to go to Tenby, of all places. And so we went and we watched a few rugby matches, and we were in this in the oldest pub in Tenby, and we sat there, and it was quite full, and it was full of people, and we're all chatting away, and we'd had a few drinks, and for some reason one of the topics of conversation that came up was Professor Brian Cox, as in I wish Simon was here. He does a brilliant impression. 8 billion years, that one. And so Professor Brian, and somebody said, hey, did you know he used to be the keyboard player in D-Room, who had hits with Things Can Only Get Better in the late 90s? And there's a voice at the back of my head that says, tell him the C-3PO story, okay? And I went, look, boys, what? That's nothing. I said, that's not. And then it was, quiet, got everybody in the pub, quiet, wait, if you think that's interesting, wait till you hear this. And so the pub's hushed at this point, and there's all these people here who we don't even know. And I said, you know Star Wars? And everyone went, yeah. I said, you know C-3PO? And they all went, yeah. Human-Cyborg relations? Yeah. Because we're all men, we all know these things. And I said, you know the fella that plays him? And they all went, yeah. Anthony Daniels? Yeah. I said, you know Shalimar? Everyone's going, yeah. Popular 80s disco outfit, that hits with Night to Remember in the early 80s. I said, yeah. I said, the man that played C-3PO was the lead singer of Shalimar, and this was greeted not with the wonderment and awe which I was expecting, but absolute silence. And that voice at the back of my head that was saying, tell them about C-3PO, just suddenly went, that's not true, is it? And I looked round and everybody just looked at me and just said, no, he isn't. And I said, yes, he is. And they said, no, he isn't. And the lead singer of Shalimar, the popular disco outfit from the 1980s with hits of Night to Remember and such, is called Jeff Daniel. He doesn't even have the same surname, right? He's got a completely different first name. So, but if you put Anthony Daniels, the man who played C-3PO, with Jeff Daniel, the man who's the lead singer for Shalimar, together, Anthony Daniels is a tall, English, white dancer, right? Jeff Daniel is a short, American, black singer, right? You can't get two people who look more dissimilar than these two people. And everybody was just going, what the hell are you talking about? This is utter nonsense. And I said, but I'd read it in, I didn't have it with me, I said, but I'd read it in the Star Wars presentation binder by Walker's Crisp. Walker's Crisp, Gary Lineker wouldn't lie to me about the lead singer of Shalimar. And so, ever since that moment, if Shalimar ever come on the radio, normally Radio 2 because we're all engineers, the number of emails and LinkedIn messages that I get with people saying, "Oh, C3PO's on the radio again," and then people. I mean, at that night it was just the competition in the pub seemed to be people going, "Do you remember that short magician used to play C3PO, Paul Daniel?" "Oh no, that's right, that wasn't him, was it?" So of course I've never lived this down. So what I do, I tell this story to strangers by way of therapy for me. So.
Okay. Wow. I guess other than don't believe everything you read out of a packet of crisps, what valuable lesson did you learn, John?
I did indeed learn a very valuable lesson that day, and it is basically, again with my background in modelling, your model is only as good as the information that goes into it. And as you've just pointed out, we must be able to trust the source information. And there's got to be a provenance to it, and we've got to have confidence that it's correct. And, as you just said, you can't just believe everything that you read, whether it's in a bag of crisps or one of my excellent 18 books. Obviously, you can believe what I write, but you can't just read some of it and take. You need to look for the truth behind it, because your model is only as good as the information that goes in it. I spent 15 years believing something that's just utter nonsense. And if I'd looked at that for 1 second with any sort of critical thinking, I would have known immediately, this is insane. What on earth? Walkers have clearly got it wrong. But I didn't. I just believed it, and I believed it for 15 years, and it came out in that way. So we've got to make sure that whatever information that we use, we can trust, and it does have a provenance to it, and that we can have confidence in the information that we're using.
Excellent. Right. Well, check your sources, I guess. Don't trust walkers. Yeah. Gary Lineker did lie to you all these years ago. Thank you very much, John. This was great. Thank you, listeners, for joining us for bags of potato-related fun today. And join us next time as we look at more lessons learned from careers in systems engineering. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jess.